got a package from China. So I ordered one of these 18650 battery spot welders, DIY kits from the great land of China. So I thought I'd do a how to put it together video. Here it is. It's very basic. Got two power leads. You've got your actual 2 leads for doing your spot welding. Some heat shrink. Comes with some nickel to test. You've got a capacitor. Got your beeper, which I've just put into place on the board. So it's your beeper. Comes with some terminals, which are funnily enough only rated for 20 amps. Some screws and nuts to put it together with. So I'm going to show you how to actually build one of these boards, and then we're going to do a review on this one and see how it works. I think this cost about £15. Took a couple of days to arrive. Very simple to install. You're going to need a couple of tools for this. So you're going to need a soldering iron, because you have to solder a couple of the components onto the actual board. Some side cutters, some eye strippers, some crimpers. I would recommend some Kapton tape, or something like some cardboard, and that would just be to cover the back of the board once you've made all your connections, just so that if you put this down on some nickel or something like that, so you've got your nickel, you put that down, you've then got some protection on the back of the board from shorting it out. So that's the tools you're going to need. So when you look on the board here, we have a beeper, which actually tells you which is plus, and it tells you on the board where plus goes. But the longer leg on an item is normally your plus or minus. So what we're going to do is just install that into the board with that there. Get your ring on, some solder, and a quick lick of solder on there. The solder on there. That's all it needs. 2 blobs of solder. What you're going to want to do, once you've installed that component, get your side cutters and just remove the extras of the legs. So on your capacitor again, it is marked as minus, but again the short one's minus, the long one is plus. On this board you have an option to do it on the back or the front of the board. I'm going to mount everything on the top of the board for this one. So just going to do exactly the same. I've just bent this over. The legs did come straight, but I've bent it just so that the legs fit with the capacitor laying down. It just makes for a easier installation if you want to put it into a box or something afterwards. And then I'm just going to rest this just here, while we just solder these two here. Clean the soldering iron off. It's just a very cheap soldering iron. That's all you need for this job. There we are. That is soldered on. All I'm going to do is just, in case this board needs it to be soldered on from the back as well. There we are. And that is all the soldering this board actually requires. I'm not sure why they couldn't have done that from the manufacturing stage, and then it wouldn't have needed to be a DIY kit. So there we are, that's the soldering done. Very simple. I have 2 pieces of heat shrink. These are very long for this, so what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to put some just over this end here. But before we do that, I'm actually going to just solder this crimp connection here, just because I think it could do with just a little bit more. It's crimped on, but just to make sure it's crimped on and a really good connection. This is where a little soldering iron is going to struggle. I should have used my larger soldering iron for this. This is just optional, you don't have to do this obviously. You could just use it as it is, but I've got the soldering iron out. It really doesn't hurt to do this. And there we are, we've just added some solder just to help that connection. I'm not going to worry about doing that end, but I will do the same with this one here. Oh, I can feel the heat down the wire there. So that's that soldered on. So with those two on there, all I'm going to do is just measure this heat shrink and just cut a small piece off the end. So we have some for the ends. All you need to do with this heat shrink is just heat it up, and it will shrink as the name suggests. And that's your spot welding probes ready to use. Now we have our 2 power cables. So you need your wire strippers. So this is just a 12 gauge aluminium wire, very cheap to make and manufacture. So going to crimp these on. You can use a pair of these type of wire strippers if you use these for crimping. See at the back here they've got the area for crimping. Not that they're actually very good, but they do kind of work. Have to just fold them over on themselves and put the wire in and so on and so forth. I'm going to try crimping these with some actual ratchet crimpers, see if they'll work. It may or may not. They did not. Well, saying that, they did, but they didn't do a very pretty job. And again, I'm going to solder these ring terminals on just to make sure that they are on as good as they can be. That is the incorrect type of crimpers for this, but we shall solder them anyway. Let's go in. There we are. See, it's just melted the aluminium to the copper connector. Let's just do this one, and we can measure up the other ends. and then once we've measured up the other ends, we can chop them and fit them to the battery, and I mean to the board, and then board to the battery. There we are, that's all nicely soldered on. So back to the board. These are very easy to wire. You've got in and out plus, so that is literally going to be your 2 plus terminals. Still very hot. I would link them together like this and then put them onto one, although you can put them onto 2 separates. It's just going to be a straight current path for that if you put them on the same nut. And then you have negative in from your battery and negative out. So this will actually switch the negative side. So next thing we do, get some of these nuts and bolts. So you need to decide which side of the board you want your cables to come from. I'm doing everything from the top of the board. Just do these up. In and out. The other thing with this board, the reason you might want to put something on the back of it is there is a capacitor on this board, and I will tell you the last thing you ever want to do is put your fingers across the terminals of a capacitor. It's not a nice thing to do. So that's another reason it is a good idea to cover the back of this board, because yeah, if you by accident just touch that and that capacitor's got some charge in it, it will certainly make you jump. Right, so next is in and out. So when you look at the board, you've got obviously your 2 leads coming out. You want to really fit them so they are going in the right directions for the neatest wiring, let's say. The only thing you need to do on the board is get to this button here, and that's your change of mode. You can see now why I've put the insulation around here. It's not so much important on this one, but you can see here if it touches anything else on the board, it just means that you can run the wiring a little bit better. Let's grab a spanner. What size are these? 8mm. 9. You need 9. That's an 8. Grab a screwdriver. Now you just got to tighten them up. Want these nice and tight. And that's your build basically done. So now we just need to put 2 terminals on the end here, which are going to connect to a car battery. So we're actually going to use a 12 volt lead acid battery for this. The reason for that is I've got lots of lipos, but a car battery is more accessible to most people, so that's why I'm going to use it in this build. And the other good thing about a car battery is it's very large, has a lot of capacity, will run for a very long time, and there's no chance of causing any damage by shorting a lead acid battery out. Whereas obviously shorting out a lipo is a dangerous thing because they like to catch fire. So like I said earlier, we're just going to put the Kapton tape over the back just to help prevent any shorts when we put this down. But a piece of cardboard stuck to the back of this will be, I'd say, probably sufficient just to stop it from shorting out. I just have Kapton tape, so that's what I'm going to use. So here's our car battery. This is an old style car battery with flat terminals because my old car takes this type of car battery. So when we do this, what I was thinking is I really wanted to kind of have it so we can have it in a nice way. Maybe mount it up here. So when we do work thing is we can do it like here. When we do the spot welding, it cannot be too far away, but if that goes to there, not really going to need to chop a lot off this one. It's only out by a small amount. Chop that off. Put a couple of terminals on the end here, and then that will be see how this wire goes. We may upgrade this cable later on. There's nothing to stop you from putting a higher gauge cable on this slot. And one of these terminals say that they're only rated for 20 amps. It's kind of interesting. I can't remember what the spot welder said it would weld at on its highest output level. I'm sure it's more than 20 amps. So just making these into the triangle shape like I said earlier, just to help with that crimping. So just on this one and that one. I'm intrigued to see if this is any good. I did watch one or two other YouTube videos, I'm sure you have as well. Just trying to find a reasonable little spot welder. I actually made one using a 150 amp relay and some cable and a switch, which worked, but it was very hit and miss, and was burning through the insulation, not the insulation, the nickel, a lot. So right, now we are going to just solder these ends on. Okay, so our two terminals now soldered. So apparently you push the button, that tells you it's on number 2. We then get some nickel. I'll try the stuff they supplied. It's very thin. Obviously you're going to need some 18650s. I'm not going to try it on them just yet. What I'm going to do is try it on the nickel that was supplied. Let's cut a couple of strips. This is very thin. I don't know what point this is, but just going to put this piece of cardboard down just so we can try it. Moment of truth. So this is the first time I've ever used one of these battery spot welders. So from what I've seen is you put one on, you hold the nickel in place, you hold the other one up and whoop, makes you jump, but well, something's happened. 1, 2, 3. Get these apart. Okay, well there's no heat in the nickel. You can see that it has punched through. That's definitely welded that together. Okay, so you got 1, 2, and then you go 3, which is level 3. Which looks to be quite a bit more aggressive. That's level 4. Can you see it from there? I think so. So we push down with that one and okay, so you can see from that it's just burnt that. So that was a good spot weld. Okay, so the conclusion. It spots thin nickel together, doesn't spot thick nickel. So the nickel that they supply in the pack is okay for it, which is thin. See if it will on high output. Yeah, see it goes through the thin nickel and it will go to the thicker nickel, but it won't do nickel to nickel. So one last thing to try is obviously on the 18650s. So this is the thick nickel. I'm going to see if we can weld, as we should, these top terminals with this nickel. Can you see that? So we've got three spots on that, and it has. Okay, well that's a relief. So you can do nickel to the battery, but you can't do the nickel to nickel. which I have actually heard is a bit more tricky to do than just to the battery. So that's a relief. Right, now I'm going to leave it there for this evening. So that is the cheap spot welder off of eBay, and the answer is yes, it does spot weld. The kit's quite cool, you know, fun to put together, easy, as we've just discovered. Like I say, the things I would say about this is put something on the back of the board to insulate the board. Recommend a car battery, easy to use and easily accessible for most people. And yeah, well, it seems to work. So I'll leave a comment under this video in the future if it ever stops working, and I hope you found it useful. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.